In 2018, a slick promotional video showed a Nikola truck cruising down a desert highway. It looked like the future. One problem: the truck wasn't driving. It was rolling, downhill, with the engine off. The company had towed it to the top of a hill, let gravity do the rest, and angled the camera so the road looked level. That's the story everyone knows about Nikola, the truck that didn't drive. It's a great story. It's also not the interesting one, because the rolling truck isn't the part that should amaze you. This is. That company, with no working truck and almost no money coming in, was once worth more than Ford. $30 billion for a hill-rolling prototype. This is the story of how that happened, and why the rolling truck was the least of it. Meet Trevor Milton. In 2014, he founded a company to build long-haul trucks that ran on hydrogen instead of diesel. Zero emissions, huge range, the whole clean future pitch. He named it Nikola, as in Nikola Tesla. Elon Musk had taken the inventor's last name for his car company. Milton took the first name for his truck company, Subtle. And Milton could sell. In December 2016, he unveiled the Nikola One on a big stage and told the crowd it fully functions and works. People believed him. Why wouldn't they? The truck on that stage did not, in fact, fully function. No working fuel cell, no motors to turn the wheels. It was, more or less, a very expensive shell. But nobody in the audience could see that. And then, in 2020, Milton did the thing that turned his story into a fortune. He took the company public, but not the normal way. To sell shares to the public, most companies go through an IPO, months of banks and regulators picking your finances apart. Nikola skipped all of it. It used a SPAC. The short version, a SPAC, is an empty company already on the stock market holding nothing but cash. A real company merges into it and pops out the other side as a public stock, without ever facing a normal IPO's scrutiny. Here's why that mattered. In a traditional IPO, there are limits on how rosy a picture you're allowed to paint. In a SPAC merger, the rules were looser. You could sell the dream, and Milton was selling the best dream on the lot. So in June 2020, Nikola hit the stock market and investors, desperate for the next Tesla, piled in. Within days, the stock went vertical. At its peak, Nikola was worth more than $30 billion, more than Ford, a company that had been building real cars for over a century and selling millions of them a year. Nikola had sold exactly 0 trucks, 0, and almost no revenue to speak of. Sit with that. A company with nothing the public could actually buy was briefly worth more than Ford. That's not a Trevor Milton problem, that's an everyone problem. The market wanted to believe so badly that it skipped the only question that mattered. Does the truck actually work? Then came the moment that should have sealed it. On September 8, 2020, General Motors, a real century-old car maker, announced a $2 billion deal to take a stake in Nikola and help build its trucks. It was the ultimate stamp of approval. If GM was in, Nikola had to be real. The stock jumped again. Milton looked untouchable. That was a Tuesday. 2 days later, it all came apart. A small investment firm called Hindenburg Research published a report calling Nikola an intricate fraud. Now, Hindenburg was a short seller. It was openly betting the stock would drop, so it had every reason to swing hard. Worth keeping in mind. But the biggest claims weren't really deniable. That famous truck in motion video. Hindenburg said it was simply rolling down a hill, and Nikola, forced to respond, essentially admitted it, pointing out that the video was only ever called in motion, never described as driving under its own power. The report kept going. Parts Milton implied were Nikola's own inventions appeared to be off-the-shelf components with the supplier's name taped over. A German factory he'd suggested was already building trucks. The partner running it said no trucks had rolled off the line. The stock collapsed. The GM deal, that $2 billion stamp of approval, fell apart within weeks, shrinking to a fraction of itself before quietly dying. And 2 weeks after the report, Trevor Milton resigned. He deleted his social media. The salesman who'd built the whole thing on his own voice suddenly went silent. So this is the moment everyone remembers. The truck on the hill, the fake video. And it's easy to file the whole thing under one con man with a camera trick. But the camera trick isn't what made Nikola dangerous. Plenty of founders exaggerate. The reason a single hill-rolling video could vaporize $30 billion is that there was never $30 billion of substance underneath it. The valuation was almost all story. A SPAC let that story go public without a real check. A hype-hungry market inflated it. A charismatic founder kept pumping. The rolling truck wasn't the disease, it was just the first symptom anyone could actually see. Which brings us to the real ending, because the lie was only the beginning. What happened next, to Milton and to the company, is the part that tells you what this was really about. The regulators came. The SEC and the Justice Department both opened cases, and they didn't go after a camera trick. They went after the lies Milton told investors to pump the stock. First, the company. In December 2021, Nikola, the corporation, agreed to pay $125 million to settle the SEC's fraud charges, money set aside to go back to the investors who got burned. Then, the man. In October 2022, a jury convicted Trevor Milton of securities fraud and wire fraud. Prosecutors drew the comparison directly, just as Elizabeth Holmes had lied about Theranos's blood machines, they said. Milton lied about whether his truck actually worked. In December 2023, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison and fined $1 million. Prosecutors had asked for 11. The losses to investors ran into the hundreds of millions. But the company couldn't outrun the emptiness. Years of scandal made it nearly impossible to raise money. And in February 2025, Nikola filed for bankruptcy, with roughly $47 million left in the bank, a rounding error next to the $30 billion it was once worth. The truck stopped. The stock was delisted. The factory and its equipment were eventually sold off to another automaker. The company, named after Nikola Tesla, simply ended. And Trevor Milton, he never spent a single day in that cell. In March 2025, about 5 weeks after the company filed for bankruptcy, he was pardoned by President Trump, and the 4-year sentence simply went away. So here's the twist. We remember Nikola for the lie, the truck on the hill. But the lie isn't what killed it. The lie just got the headlines. What killed Nikola was that behind the lie there was almost nothing. No working product, no real revenue. Just a story. And that's the lesson. And it's bigger than one guy. Hype can build a $30 billion company overnight. It genuinely can. What hype can't build is a truck that drives. Sooner or later, somebody asks the product to actually work. And if it can't, the whole tower comes down, no matter how good the story was. The salesman gets the blame, and he earned it. But watch the door he walked through. What let a hill-rolling prototype become worth more than Ford wasn't one man's charm? It was a system happy to take the story and skip the questions. So, the next time something with no product and no profit is suddenly worth billions because the story is just that good, remember the truck that drove downhill with the engine off and ask to see it climb. If you like watching confident giants walk straight off a cliff, you're in the right place. Subscribe and stick around, because there's always another giant that looked unstoppable, right up until the moment it wasn't.